to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Owens here with Johnny Sobchak for the long-awaited, highly anticipated Madam Webisode. We are reviewing the biggest meme on the internet, the silliest movie of the year, Madam Web, as well as talking about a little bit of Mr. and Mrs. Smith over on Amazon. Johnny, how are you? How thrilled are you for this fantastic webisode?
I'm excited, Zach. I'm happy to be back. And honestly, I can't even pretend like Dune is just completely occupying my brain space right now. So that's the main thing.
You are days away, right? Tuesday?
Yes, I am. As of this recording, I am approximately 50 hours or so from seeing the movie. So by the time we record next, I will thankfully have not gotten it out of my system, but I will have seen it at least. And then we'll be talking about that probably. But yeah, no, honestly though, it's been fun. Good vibes all around in terms of movies and TV. I still have only been to the theater this year, Zach, for Dune Part 1. That's the only movie I've seen in a theater in 2024. I've been twice. I went to the initial reissue, and then since we did our last recording, they did another reissue in IMAX. So I guess that's kind of part of what I've been up to is me and I coaxed basically my whole family into going and seeing it because they had all seen it once before. My mom and dad only saw it at home. They did not go to the theater the first time around. And my other siblings and in-laws and whatnot, they had only seen it the one time, even in theaters or at home. So I was able to get them to go, and they enjoyed it more, they said, than they saw the first time off. And they also said that they had kind of forgotten a lot of details. Obviously Dune is very jam-packed with names and different factions and all these different technologies. So I think it's probably a wise decision to try and rewatch it, or at least watch a summary or something before you see part two. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, it's been pretty chill. You've been busier
hearing,
than
Johnny?
me. Yeah.
I'm hearing right now that I have been taking one for the team, taking many for the team is what I'm hearing. If you've seen Dune twice, and meanwhile, look at this track record: Night Swim, Mean Girls,
Ugh, man,
Argyle, Madam Web. Now
you've been going through it.
I am literally fighting for my life at the theater, begging for next Sunday. I won't see it as early as you, but next Sunday when I get to see Dune Part 2 and finally have a good theatrical movie for 2024.
Hey,
because
man.
I've been putting in all that work to give the listeners what they need to do
What
it
they
for the
need.
content, brother.
What they want. No, you are right, and I have to take my hat off to you because you are doing the work and getting these new releases their extra time to shine. But I mean, to your point though, I would say, I mean, everyone knows that January in particular is kind of like a dead zone in terms of movies. Now we're about halfway through February, a little bit more action in terms of new releases. You have Valentine's Day is kind of a hot spot to drop new movies, and President's Day weekend in the United States. So we're getting a little bit more right now. I know the Bob Marley movie just came out, One Love, and of course Madam Web, which we'll be talking about today, or at least you will be talking about it, and I'll be asking about it. And then we had Argyle as well. So yeah, thankfully, I mean, the good news is with the Dead Zone, it gives people a chance to go and rewatch other movies like Dune. I think that's why they're doing these reissues right now, get some extra butts in seats. And of course, award season movies are getting more play as well, like Poor Things and The Holdovers and American Fiction. So that's great to see as well. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I haven't had too much going on. I mean, in my personal life, it's been pretty standard, nothing too crazy going on. And then in terms of just what I've been watching, um, I mentioned Dune already. It's really the only thing I've been like rewatching, so to speak. And then in the last week, I watched two really good movies for the first time. Movies that had been on my list for a while that I've been kind of holding off and waiting for the right time. But my buddy has I believe it's the Criterion, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's a different outlet that did a kind of a special release. But Takashi Miike's Audition from, I think it's late 90s, early 2000s. And it's a very, I'm not even going to go into any detail because if you don't know anything about it, it's a great movie and you should watch it, but the less you know, the better. Um, but yeah, I've been putting it off for a number of reasons and finally got to watch it, and it definitely packed a punch that I was hoping for. So that's a great one. And then True Romance is a little bit more, I guess, popular just because Tarantino wrote this movie, believe it or not. He's the sole screenwriting credit on the movie. He didn't direct it though. It is directed by Tony Scott, who is Ridley Scott's brother, the late great Tony Scott. He also directed Top Gun and some other films, popular films like in the 80s and 90s, especially. But I liked it a lot. It's definitely like, it kind of feels like elementary Tarantino. Like it's very like, it's like you can definitely tell Tarantino wrote it. And it also, like, literally 15 minutes or 10 minutes into the movie, I turned to my buddy Clint, who I was watching it with, and I was like, God, Tarantino is such a loser. Like he's so like full of himself and like just puts his fantasies like into all of his movies. But in the movies he directs, he has clearly like a more even keel on certain things. And I think this movie was right around the same time, maybe just before or after he did Pulp Fiction. So like right as he was kind of getting his foot in the door and like I think getting a grasp on how to tell a story and do right characters and that sort of thing. So it's definitely like lower tier in terms of writing for Tarantino, but Tony Scott I think does a good job of elevating it with his style and the way he kind of plays the romance in the movie. We watched this on Valentine's Day because we were hanging out and we thought that it'd be appropriate since I'd never seen it kind of do something like that. So it was really fun. Christian Slater is the lead. Patricia Arquette is the co-lead. They're both really good in it. And the whole cast, I mean, it's like star-studded. You got Gary Oldman, Sam Jackson, Christopher Walken, James Gandolfini, with some other kind of surprises in there. So it's a really fun time. It's not like necessarily a great movie in my opinion, but definitely one I was again looking to check off the list as kind of a Tarantino fan. And someone who hasn't really seen that many Tony Scott movies either, it definitely is a good time.
Well, Johnny, let me tell you not about that movie, not about the movie that I saw on Valentine's Day, which was Madame Web. We'll get to that in a minute. But you're talking about, relevant Valentine's Day movies that happen to be star-studded. A couple days after Valentine's Day, Rebecca and I threw on the titular Valentine's Day itself. Had never seen it before. Talk about star-studded.
Oh
This
my
is
gosh.
I don't know if you're familiar with the holiday cinematic universe of
Yes.
Valentine's Day, New Year's Eve, and Mother's Day. Had never
God.
seen any of them. Not a great movie.
Shocker.
However, Julia Roberts, Jessica Alba, Kathy Bates, Jessica Biel, Bradley Cooper, Eric Dane, Patrick Dempsey, Hector Elizondo, Jamie Foxx, Jennifer Garner, Topher Grace, Anne Hathaway, Ashton Kutcher, Queen Latifah, Taylor Lautner, George Lopez, Shirley MacLaine, Emma Roberts, Taylor Swift. I mean, what a cast. What a cast for this 2-star movie. This thing, I don't know what the deal is, man. It was rough, but they were like, how can we just introduce 800 characters all at once? You're like an hour and a half into the movie still meeting new characters and figuring out how they all weave together, and then somehow all their stories are interconnected like the MCU. So
Golly.
you may think that True Romance is an applicable Valentine's Day movie, but I'll raise you Valentine's Day itself.
Valentine's Day and these other movies you just described, Mother's Day and New Year's Eve or whatever the hell they called it. That's what happens in Hollywood when someone owes someone a favor, and then they all get roped into something like that, or like a movie 43, or the like, where it's just like ridiculous cameos and just a wide array of like all these super famous people in a silly, silly movie. I think I probably saw Valentine's Day maybe once when I was like a teenager or like even younger. Um, just because like that was the thing to do, I guess, like around that time when it came out. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's wild. Kind of in retrospect, like it definitely feels like a relic of that era more so. I feel like you don't really see those types of movies anymore.
Right.
For whatever reason, I guess people just aren't scheming the same way that they were trying to get those made. But um, yeah, I mean, honestly though, nowadays, any big movie kind of worth its weight, like an Oppenheimer, a Barbie, Dune. Like I think in especially in the era of like Marvel movies, the Avengers in particular, like if you want to have success, if you want to get people excited and draw them in, you have to have a big name ensemble. Like you have to
Mhm.
have recognizable faces, known entities. It's harder, much harder, I feel, for a movie to have big success or really gain traction when you only have maybe a couple of people or a handful of people that are, of that scale or that caliber. It's you got to kind of like really fill it out, which is an interesting phenomenon. We could probably have a whole conversation about that, but it is funny. I did see you talk about that, and I think I saw other people posting, and one of my other buddies like mentioned it. I was just like, damn, like I totally forgot these existed until I guess Valentine's Day because people just dig them up.
It was the combination of that and Taylor Swift was enough
Oof.
to, garner interest there. My letterbox review was 2 stars, but I said Taylor Swift innocent because hey, she
Rude.
kills it in her like 3 scenes, but other than that, you know, it was her and Taylor Lautner
Uh,
dating in real life at the time. What
oh
a
my
what a
gosh.
concept. Um, but
Wow.
yeah, that was one movie that I watched. Also watched Madam Web. Watched Con Air for the first time, a little throwback with Nicolas Cage. Have you seen Con Air? Because I had never
I
seen it.
I I think I've seen it just once like years ago. It's a fun time. It's
I got
pretty
bonus
well
points
done.
because I watched it on a plane.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so very on brand. But just like a classic like 90s action movie where it's like just the most
100%.
ridiculous plot ever. And then you've got like Nick Cage, John Malkovich, John Cusack, um, all like Ving Rhames is in there as not, I feel like I've only ever seen Ving Rhames uh as Luther from like
Yeah.
not only ever, but that's just like what nowadays like I'm like, oh, Ethan. Like all I do is just like hear his voice. But
Ethan.
um Ethan, what if the airplane full of criminals is exactly what the entity wants you to do? Um, but no, it
Uh,
was fun, explosive, ridiculous stuff. And then
that's
also,
great.
of course, seeing like the origin of those two Nicolas Cage gifs where like his hair is blowing in the breeze and he like winks and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
it was nice to see that. That was really just like a random one where I was going on a trip and I was like, oh, what can I download to watch while I'm flying? And saw that and I was like, you know what? Never seen it. We'll throw it on. But those are my three new watches, and then continued on my Denny Villeneuve rewatch with Prisoners. So now I believe I only need Blade Runner 2049, um, which I will rewatch this week,
Got
and
to,
then
got to.
I still need Ensemble, um, which would not be a rewatch. That would be a first timer. But I will say,
Yeah, man.
with
Got to.
Prisoners, I bumped it up from 4.5 to 5 stars.
Wow. Okay.
It
Okay.
was this was I think it was probably the first time that I'd seen it since theaters way back in the day. And
10 years ago.
it's still below Arrival, below Dune for me.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
but
I think that's
it
fair.
was just as electric, as tense, as thrilling as I remember.
That's
Um,
great.
and I don't know if I remember if I've ever told you this. When I saw it in theaters, it was like the something happened in the theater, so it was like literally the climax of the movie when Jake Gyllenhaal is driving through like the rain,
Oh
shot
man.
in the head, trying to get to the hospital, and like the lights come on and the movie stopped, and then they had to like restart it, and then they like jumped ahead too far, and then like rewound back to like the right spot. So it was nice watching this at home and having the front to end, like beginning to end, no
Yeah.
interruptions. But no, just extremely fired up for Dune Part 2, and to continue revisiting all these movies is amazing. And then not Denny, but rewatched Interstellar, showed it to Rebecca for the first
Ooh,
time.
yes. Whoa, what'd you think?
She really liked it. She was crying at the end.
Yeah, that too.
During the hospital visit at the end, but just such a great movie, and to watch it now fresh on the heels of finishing True Detective season 1,
Hey, he
was
was
just like
cooking, bro.
McConaughey at his peak in that era. That was good to. And then I as you noticed on my letterbox there, I had the Russ Cole quote as my little review there about time being a flat circle. The connection
Yes, I
between,
did see
like,
that.
not connected whatsoever, but there's still similarities between the personas and the characters here to loop it all together. But no, was a big fan of rewatching that. That was another movie that I watched for the first time on a plane back in the day. So I did not. This is
Oh my
I have
God,
revisited it plenty of times since
bro.
then. But I definitely got much more out of it in the viewing since watching it on the back of a seat in a plane. But
Well, I'm glad you've come a long way there. I will say also, just real quick, because I noticed this, I forgot about it, and just remembered when you were talking about Con Air, another 90s like kind of classic action cheese fest is Speed with Keanu Reeves. And I just
mhm.
rewatched that for the first time as well, the 4K, because my buddy had it. And I went to log it that day and I saw you did Con Air the same day. And I was like, oh my God, what are the odds that we're both watching like this kind of movie the same day? But
It's like the classic like TNT at 4 p.m. like
100%. And Speed is great. Like it holds up. I was actually very pleased with how much I liked it after, a few years of having not really thought about it very much. But Keanu's great in that. The cast also, like Dennis Hopper plays the villain. He's really, really good. Sandra
Sandy in
Bullock.
there, right?
Yeah. Jeff Daniels plays like a supporting role. Joe Morton. Alan Ruck from
Oh,
Succession.
Connor, the con
Back in
heads.
his, yeah, this was like post Ferris Bueller, obviously, but
Mhm.
it's crazy just to see him in that. And yeah, no, it was a very good time though. I definitely recommend, if no one's seen that. It's action that like is so, it's just they don't really make action movies like that way, I feel. Like with just like such a simple concept that is like
Yeah.
so big and loud, and like a real bus like flying around LA and explosions going off. It's just it's a fun time. So yeah, I'm glad to see that we were on the same wavelength.
Well, I'm pretty sure I have Speed, like the digital copy from some
Hmm.
studio at some point, but I have never watched it. So maybe I'll have to continue on
You would dig it for
this
sure.
90s action revisit. But got to get Blade Runner, got to get Ansandi first before
Yes.
I head to
Priorities, Zach.
a week from today, next Sunday, for the fan first screening. We'll be at Dune Part 2. But Johnny, I know before we get into Madam Web, the other thing that we've been watching on the TV front, both of us are at the same point in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We've talked about this a little bit on the podcast, throwing it back a couple weeks to the draft. Jake selected this as one of his shows for the year. I had watched the first episode at that point, but had not gone any further. Now we are 6 out of 8 episodes deep, so we've still got 2 more to finish. But I'm I knew that, or I had a feeling that I was going to like this. I was excited about it. You, on the other hand, weren't very invested in this, and you've come a
No.
long way, haven't you?
Yes, I was wrong. I was very much in the camp of like, so we should talk about the movie just briefly. So
The cinematic masterpiece from 2005. Talk about 90s action, 2005 action, brother.
yeah, they were still bringing it. And of course, the movie's most famous because Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie got together making the movie, and he divorced Jennifer Aniston. They got married, yada yada
Mhm.
years later. I watched it a lot as a kid because it was always on TV, like TNT, like you said. But also my parents liked that movie a lot. And I remember for whatever reason, I ended up like watching with them or catching it while they were watching it. And it just was like, I don't know, it was like a nostalgic feeling like that I have associated with that movie because of that. And so I don't think it's like, I wouldn't go ahead and be like, oh my God, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like it's a masterpiece, or like, oh, that movie's such a classic, anything like that. Like it's a good
fucking banger.
It's probably still, having not seen it in literally like a decade or more, it's probably still a good, solid, like mid 2000s action movie. Because Doug Liman directed it, who did,
Hell yeah, brother.
a
The
ton of
Bourne
great action movies, Bourne and Edge of Tomorrow,
Jumper.
etc. So with that in mind, I was like, what the hell is the point of doing this concept with different actors? You don't have the same like electricity, you don't have the same lightning in a bottle effect. And it's just like, it felt like just such a cool kind of one-off thing. Like I don't need more of that concept necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't, in all honesty, I was ignorant about who really was behind the show, who was directing, writing it, producing, etc. I knew it was a Prime Video production, but outside of that and like the main couple in the cast, I didn't really know anything. So then I'm eating my words now because I was like, oh, it's so dumb. Having watched most of the show now, 6 of I think 8 episodes, about 10 minutes into episode 1, I was like, okay, I was totally wrong. Like this is really well constructed in the concept and how they're establishing everything. And I can easily see myself watching several hours of this, especially with the 2 leads that are at the forefront of the show, the primary John and Jane Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I find out, I get to the end of episode 1, and who do I see on the credits as who directed the pilot? It's Hiro Murai, who did Atlanta, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, and I think is a masterpiece of a show. And knowing Donald Glover obviously has a hand in the development of Mr. and Mrs. Smith now, I was just like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Like why I like this pilot so much and why I like the energy and like the vibe of this show. And so then it was just like we took off and watched 2 or 3 episodes at a time. And unfortunately, we only have a couple episodes left because I really, really like this show. And I think it's quite well done. I know you obviously were not a naysayer on so we had like a flip side going into it, but I think now we're pretty much on the same page in how much we've enjoyed it, and would definitely like to see more of this show. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm glad that you gave this a chance and were able to get on board with it, because it is a whole lot of fun. And like you mentioned about like the 2005 movie and the married couple working, like the premise, there's like the similar like roots, but it's like entirely different in the execution
Yes,
of it, with that
definitely.
original movie being married couple working for separate agencies, doesn't know the other one is a spy, then they find out and they're targeting
Yes.
each other,
Yeah.
versus this time it's like, oh, we are like a new Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We both get recruited to this agency, like looking for new lives essentially. And we're married and we don't know anything about each other. And we're working together versus against each other. And
Hmm.
I think that is such a smart way to like, you're still within the confines of this world, of this story of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but you're doing something completely new. You've got these 2 extremely charming and charismatic leads in Maya Erskine and Donald Glover, and you're getting to know them as they're getting to know each other. There's so much like exploration happening together, and like the awkward stage of getting to know each other, and like just figuring it all out throughout those first couple episodes. Like, I know you mentioned the Atlanta connection, but I feel like multiple times I like was getting similar vibes to Master of None. If you ever watched that on Netflix,
I have not. No.
it's the Aziz Ansari like comedy
Yeah.
romance series that, like, I feel like this show does so well of like blending together so many different things, because it's like there's spies, there's action and like brutal murder and killing and stuff, but it's like I'm literally like giggling, kicking my feet, like blushing about this couple as they're like getting to know each other and having chemistry, and like
Yeah.
it never feels like too intense, it never feels like slow, it does like, it's just like it's like a warm, fuzzy feeling while you're watching this show that involves like contract killing and stuff, you know?
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that was something that maybe that was an element of it that I was skeptical of, was just, and again, I didn't really know that much about the concept. I didn't know that it was going to be a kind of flipping the movie version on its head in terms of the plot and kind of how it comes together. I think that's why it does work as well as it does, because you're starting kind of from the ground up. It keeps, I guess it provides the viewer with enough context and information about the program or organization that they come into contact with, that they're now a part of as the show starts and goes on. That gives you just enough information to like be invested or curious without going into all the details. Because in the movie, they pretty much are in their own respective organizations effectively. Like one is all women, one is all men.
Mhm.
And you know, it's like competing organizations, and there's like that element of, okay, they don't know the other one you know, is involved, and vice versa. So here, to have it start off with they're both joining the same organization and they are being paired up, and they have to learn how to be partners, and whether or not a romance develops from that, you know, is its own kind of thing. But just all the different intricacies and different dynamics that they explore within, you know, professional relationships, platonic relationships, romantic relationships. I just wasn't anticipating all that. And I think that's really the heart of the show, why it works as well as it does. The spy stuff and the action and kind of the thriller, like intrigue element, is well done, I think, but it's not like the standout part of it. Like it's just a fun kind of vehicle for the romantic uh you know, relationship
Mhm.
to develop and be highlighted. And that really comes down to, at the end of the day, I think Donald Glover and oh my God, why is her name escaping me right now?
Maya
The
Erskine.
Maya Erskine, thank you. Maya Erskine, and she's hilarious, by the way. I've never seen her in anything. Of course, being a huge fan of Atlanta, I'm very familiar with Donald Glover, so I would always
Mhm.
expect him to do well. Um, Again, I was not familiar with her work, and so I was very pleasantly surprised just within, like I said, the first 10 or 15 minutes to see how she really was, you know, a presence on screen. She had great comedic timing. She's just a all around, you know, very capable and strong actor. So they play extremely well off of each other. They have a great chemistry in a comedic sense and a romantic sense, you know, sexually. Like it all just really has a proper weight to it. And also stylistically, again, as a fan of the Atlanta show, they have a really clean, fun, smart style and like aesthetic to it. It's not like overly done, but it feels real. It feels, you know, quote unquote grounded. Um, and it's just it hits like all the right spots. Like it's just a great rom-com mixed with action, like spy, like genre show. And I just was not anticipating. And on top of that, again, being ignorant of how the show was set up and what they were going to do with it, I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone who doesn't know, but there's a lot of great supporting roles and actors in the
Mhm.
show as well. So not only do you have a great pair of leads, but you're building around them with great cameos and single episode kind of appearances. And they, you know, they really work well off each other. It's written really well. Francesca Sloan writes a lot of the show, and I would presume is like the showrunner effectively. I don't know that for a fact. I'd have to double check, but she definitely does a great job with writing. And in particular, I guess I should go to, as kind of my last big comment, episode 6, the most recent episode I watched last night. Pretty much, it doesn't completely ditch all of the spy stuff because it's still a factor in the story they're telling, but it is pretty much a straight up like domestic drama or dramedy episode. Without going into too much detail, like it
Mhm.
really is just them in a room talking about their issues, what they're experiencing, how they're processing each other's strengths or weaknesses or insecurities and all of those things. And it that was when it really hit me like, okay, I've been enjoying this for the first 5 episodes, and some things I maybe like more than others, but overall I think it's a great show. But this is like, okay, like they are really wanting to dig into real world, real life relationship issues. And I think that is just like I wasn't again anticipating that, and I think that was just such a great thing to include. Just a little over halfway into season one, where you have kind of gotten people hooked with the comedy, with some action, and now you're actually going to say something, like real. And not that they hadn't been up to
Right.
that point, but it was just kind of like little nuggets or little things here at the beginning or end of an episode or in between, in brief moments. So but that really just kind of like shows like, okay, they're really putting thought into this, and I could see this playing out over, 2, 3+ seasons potentially. And I think that is a really exciting prospect, especially if they keep a lot of the primary talent, involved as
Mhm.
writers and directors. And of course, they can bring in all types of other supporting actors. And I think there'd be a lot of fun, directions they could go with that. But overall, very impressed, very surprised. I hope people will give the show a chance. I hope people check it out. It sounds like it's doing pretty well for Amazon from what I've heard so
Mhm.
far in terms of viewership, but haven't seen like a ton of talk about it online, or at least in my social feeds. But I don't know, Zach. I would imagine you probably feel similarly. I know I just ate up a ton of time talking about it, but
No,
um,
it's spot on. I that sixth episode was great. I know you had sent that message in the group last night of like, oh, so this is like a show after episode six, and then I watched that earlier today before we started recording. And I was like, okay, so that's what Johnny was talking about. But it's so
yeah,
fun because like some of the best moments from that original film were like the little tiny snippets when they have like it starts with them in therapy, like couples therapy, and they're like talking about their issues, and then it ends with couples therapy after they've like saved the day and gone on their mission, and it's like all played for laughs in that instance. So it's nice to
yeah,
see like this, like, again, just like a slight nod to like the original movie, but like doing it in its own completely unique way to tell, a deeper emotional and dramatic story here between the two of them, while still
yeah,
having some of those like action sequences interspersed. But again, like you were saying, stripping away a lot of that outside stuff and having it just be like just these characters and this dialogue, and still having it be like equally effective, one of the best episodes, and just like proving how special this show is so far. um
yeah.
I'm very excited to finish it up here with these last two episodes, and hopefully it's got, let's see, we're in the, I think it's like a 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 67% audience score. So
That's
well
crazy. What
well
the
received
hell?
there. Hopefully we can continue on with a second season. I will say, you're mentioning Maya. I it's at like the top of my list to watch as far as next shows, because I've
Mhm.
seen a ton of clips from it. But Pen 15 is one of her like
Huh.
starring vessels. It's on Hulu. Um and it's like it's her and Anna Konkle, and the premise is like middle school girls, and everybody else is played by a middle schooler, and they are like adults playing the middle school, like their 13-year-old characters.
Yeah.
And it's hysterical. I've seen a ton of clips from it. And there she's the star with Anna Konkle, and I'm like in desperate need to watch it. I think there's 2 seasons of it. So I feel like just knowing your interest, that would definitely be something that you would like as well. But I wanted to talk briefly about this. Like, I'm having such a hard time because she is so good in this. Imagining when this was initially announced, it was Donald Glover and Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yes. Thank you for mentioning
and
that.
imagine how different this would be. Like, I'm like, she's Phoebe's fantastic. Love Fleabag, but like they had to have changed so much about this, because like it is so perfect for Maya Erskine to play this role. I can't
Mm.
see anyone else stepping into it, especially Phoebe at like this point in time, because she's just like crushing it. I don't know if you feel otherwise, but
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually crossed my mind while we were talking about this just a few minutes ago, and I forgot to say it. But I talked about this with Reagan after we watched maybe a couple episodes, and I told her that because she didn't know. Um, and I was just like, that would have been good, obviously. I mean, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is fantastic. I'm a big fan of Fleabag. But I'm so glad that it did not happen because Maya is. fantastic in the show and deserves a leading role alongside someone who's, as prominent and as accomplished as Donald Glover. I can see why they wanted to pair Donald and Phoebe together. Like that makes perfect sense. And I remember hearing, I guess when they initially announced the show was being made with those two, I was like, oh, that's like a cool idea. Like, I guess that could be interesting. Then I think they got Phoebe left, that was announced, and then they were bringing someone else. And I was like, okay, that doesn't seem very promising. Like, why would she leave? That seems like such a money bag, a Prime Video show. You just had Fleabag be so successful with Amazon. So that to me, it just felt like a red flag. So maybe that was in the back of my mind, like subconsciously, like making me think that the show wouldn't be good. But with Maya in the lead, I think it just, who knows how much had to change if they did change anything. I mean, who's to say? But she is fantastic, and it's hard to imagine Phoebe in this role. And it's not that she couldn't do it. Again, I do think she would have been successful, and I think it still would have been good. But Maya is just perfect, and I think that their chemistry together is excellent. And I think it's stronger that it went this direction versus what it was originally intended to be.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. But like I said, excited to see these last two episodes. I know this was like a series drop all at once, so we're kind of playing catch up at this point. But I imagine next week we'll have some thoughts on this season as a whole, and we can look back on it. But any final thoughts on Mr. and Mrs. Smith before we go from a Mr. and a Mrs. to a Madam?
No, other than people should definitely give it a chance. Definitely check it out. It's a very fun, light watch. After work, you can throw it on with or without
They're like 40,
significant other.
40-ish minute episodes, but they feel quick.
Yeah, no, they're pretty easy breezy. So, but with decent, actual material and themes and things to enjoy. So, give it a shot.
What you shouldn't give a shot, though. You know what it is. It's Madam Web, brother. Johnny, I don't know what could have compelled me to be this invested in this movie where I would go see it in theaters opening night by myself on Valentine's. Luckily, Rebecca was out of town. I was not just ignoring her and Valentine's Day to go and see this by myself. That would make this a whole nother level of sadness. So this was like because she's out of town, I don't have anything else going on, gonna go see Madam Web.
Oh, brother.
Theater was relatively crowded, so I guess people were looking for a date night movie. But what I was getting at before I got sidetracked there, I don't know why I was like convinced to go and see this, because I have never seen any of the other Sony Spider-Man movies. I've seen the Spider-Man movies, but I haven't seen either of the Venom movies, and I didn't see Morbius.
Right.
And for some reason, I'm like, hell yeah, Madam Web, let's go. I don't know if it was like the memes of it, if it was like the discourse already of like knowing how bad it was going to be. If it was one of those like, got to go see the train wreck for myself, can't look away. But that is absolutely what it was. This is the latest Sonyverse Spider-Man movie, the fourth in the franchise, I guess if you'll call it that. We've got Kraven coming later this year, I think, right? Or has that been moved? Who knows?
It should be this year, as far as I know.
Let's see. Sony's developing a number of live-action films with scheduled releases for Kraven the Hunter and Venom 3 in 2024.
Yeah.
My goodness, we're getting 3 Sonyverse movies this year.
Buckle up, brother.
Wow. I don't know if I'm going to be at opening night for either of those. But I learned my lesson. One and done here. We've got Dakota Johnson in the leading role as Madam Web. Sydney Sweeney, Celeste O'Connor, and Isabella Merced, Tahir Rahim, Emma Roberts, Adam Scott, and Zosha Mame. I did not realize that a lot of these people were in this. I guess I'd seen Adam Scott maybe way back in a commercial. I didn't know Emma Roberts was going to be in this. She wasn't like a huge role.
No.
But we're looking at a 13% critic score right now on Rotten Tomatoes, a 55% audience score. So still very low, but honestly, surprisingly high. I gave this a 4 out of 100, Johnny. And I feel like someone asked me, I was talking about it the other day with a friend. They're like, what was the 4 points for? Like, why 4 out of 100? And I was like, honestly,
literally.
Honestly, like that's a good question. I think they were like pity points of like 4 points for effort. They took a chance. They tried their best, but I'm still not convinced they tried their best. But I'm shocked to have just last episode was when we were talking about Argyle, and I was eviscerating that movie and saying how bad it was, and that I did not. I said it was one of the worst movies I'd seen in theaters in a long time. Um, and here we are, one episode later, with an even worse movie. I think Argyle had a 12 out of 100. Um, but we're 8 points lower here for Madam Web. Who knew that this could be as bad as it was? Quick synopsis. This is the Rotten Tomatoes plot, which does not really do much for me. In a switch from the typical genre, I guess this is probably like what the studio put out to try and sell it. In a switch from the typical genre, Madam Web tells the standalone origin story of one of Marvel Publishing's most enigmatic heroines. The suspense-driven thriller stars Dakota Johnson as Cassandra Webb, a paramedic in Manhattan who develops the power
Wait,
to
I'm
see
sorry. So, hold up. Her last name is Webb?
That's correct, brother. I would
Oh
imagine.
my God.
I will say, I know nothing of the source material of, I didn't read these comics growing up or anything. I would wager that that is part of the source material and not
It's
just
gotta be.
like
Yeah.
you can't fault you can fault Marvel for this way back in the day, but that's the one thing you can't hold against Madam Web here as a film.
Nah, you're right. You're right. Okay, so I just
But
pulled it up.
however, I will say Mark Webb was the director of Spider-Man movies, and that's a coincidence.
That is wild. And also, so I just pulled it up, the fictional character biography. Um, her husband's last name is Webb. So it's not her maiden name, it's her married name. So that's such a weird random detail. I guess it just so happens that maybe there's
She
some more lore there, but
Oh, I can't wait to explore that lore in Madam Web too. Too webbed. Um,
uh,
but yes, Cassie Webb, that's Dakota Johnson. She's a paramedic in Manhattan who develops the power to see the future and realizes she can use that insight to change it. Forced to confront revelations about her past, she forges a relationship with three young women bound for powerful destinies if they can all survive a deadly present. Well,
oh man.
that is what happens here, I guess. Um, yeah, big yawn there. I think, first and foremost, everything about this is a mess and everyone knows it. Like I was just saying off the top, like I think that's what drew me to go and see this movie was the memes, the discourse online. Let's look at the timeline, not even the timeline, just like a couple key events in this movie. The first images of Madam Web in costume were released on an Ocean Spray like cranberry juice bottle. Like not even a leaked production photo or something. It was like literally promotional materials for cranberry juice that had her on the bottle.
Beautiful.
That's how we saw her costume. Um, Dakota Johnson fired her team the day that the trailer came out for this movie. That's the great sign. The trailer itself, the social marketing, the promos, like every time something new came out, it was just getting eviscerated for good reason.
Mhm.
People talking about the seductive video of Dakota Johnson saying, "You're going to see it more than once and you're going to like it." Like, it's like, do they want me to fuck this movie? Like that was like the discourse around those promotional materials. And then, of course, even with the trailer, he was with my mom in the Amazon researching spiders before she died. That line's not even in the movie. So they literally, I don't know if they cut that after seeing it get memed or what,
Oh
if it was just
God.
to set the stage in the trailer. And then the press tour has been unhinged, specifically Dakota Johnson. Like she is actively campaigning against this movie, it seems like.
It's wild, dude.
like the role of an actor is to promote their movie, especially when you're doing interviews and junkets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like quotes are coming out of her being like, yeah, I don't know when I'll see this movie. Maybe I guess I'll probably watch it one day. Like, how is that going to put butts in seats to promote your movie? Like,
Yeah, that's really bad.
it's like the zero fucks given energy here is just off the charts. But with all of that being said, it's still somehow worse than you could have imagined, like as far as actually a movie going experience, which is like shocking considering how bad everyone anticipated. And man, I just need to take a minute here, but I think I know that I read you that little Rotten Tomatoes. Let's talk a little bit about just like some bullet points of the actual like plot. So we get the prologue at the beginning. It's like a flashback to 1973, I think.
Oh, God.
It's Cassie's mom is like 9 months pregnant in the Amazon, researching, looking for a spider, on the verge of like having this baby. And she's with Ezekiel Sims, who is this mysterious man, and he is like eager to find this, like they're looking for this spider. She's a scientist and has done all of the research and stuff and wants to find the spider to use its venom something for like solving world hunger and diseases and all sorts of like saving the world stuff. But Ezekiel Sims wants to like channel, he's like heard legends of like Las Arañas, the spider people of this area in the Amazon that like channel the spider powers and can be super strong and climb and I don't know, do all this crazy stuff. They find the spider, and then Ezekiel starts shooting everybody, kills everybody, and shoots Dakota Johnson's mom. But then the spider people come down. He steals the spider and goes away. And then the spider people come down and take Dakota Johnson's mom to some like shrine thing. And she gives birth and dies, but gives birth to Cassie. Then Cassie's like put in foster homes in New York, blah, blah. But they're like, she'll come back when she's ready to know her history. Then like we get Cassie like in New York. She's a EMT, like driving an ambulance, working as a paramedic. They go rescue somebody. She dies like in the car goes into the water and she like drowns, and then they save her, but she was like dead for a little bit, and she like has this like vision thing where she sees the future, gets these powers, whatever. And she comes back to life and now suddenly can like see into the future, but it's not like significant. It's like she can see like 60 seconds into the future, like immediately before things happen. I don't know if that's like the way that Madam Web in the comic books. It's not like an extremely useful power.
It sounds like Final Destination, kind of.
Yeah, it's like she can see, like literally that's exactly what it is, because she can like, she's like having a conversation with like her EMT chief or whatever, and then like he's in the car about to leave, and then like she sees the car getting hit by a truck and him dying, and is like, hey, let me, like, you should stay, like let me drive or something like that. And then he doesn't do it and he drives away, and then she literally like watches him get smashed by a truck and die. So it is very Final Destination. But as far as like superhero powers, like she can't control it. It's not like she can like look distant into the future and like solve things. It's like she has to be like in the right place at the right time. So just logistically not great. And then we get like Ezekiel Sims, who's in the present day as well, and he has like gotten these spider powers and has this like off-brand Spider-Man suit. But it's never really clear like what he does. Like all the only context that we get from him like using his powers is that he has a vision of 3 spider women in the future killing him. So he sets out to like identify like who these people are so that he can handle them, get rid of them first. But it's like I'm literally realizing this as we speak, that like I don't know in what context he ever used his powers, like other than to hunt these women down, like, because it's not like, oh yeah, like he is a good Spider-Man in New York City that's like helping people. Like and it doesn't sound like he's like, I don't even know, man. He has some connection to like NSA, and like they're building this like mass surveillance thing.
Yeah.
And so like that's what they use to track down the women. So it ends up it's like Sydney Sweeney, Isabella Merced, and Celeste O'Connor. They're like three different women that have like young girls that have different scenarios that are sort of like connected. Like Isabella Merced lives in Dakota Johnson's building. Sydney Sweeney's stepmom was the one that was rescued in the like crash that Dakota Johnson saved her in. And then Celeste O'Connor's like was skateboarding across the road and almost got hit by the ambulance or something. Like, I don't know. But so Cassie like has a vision of Ezekiel Sims killing them and sets out to like try and protect them.
Yeah.
And you know, it kind of just goes from there. But I think the like craziest thing about this movie is that all you saw in marketing was like Sydney Sweeney in a sexy Spider-Man suit for like 2 seconds, and like all the like the other Spider Women and everything. There's literally like, get your stopwatch out. There's like 43 seconds of them in like using superpowers, and like they never have powers in this movie. They only have like brief glimpses of the future in which they have these powers.
Oh my God.
So, and then Dakota Johnson doesn't even like have her full powers until like the end of the movie, like the very end.
Yeah.
Like when she's literally fighting this bad Spider-Man, she hits him with her car twice. And then he ends up dying by getting crushed by they like go to like a warehouse full of fireworks and they set them all off and it like catches fire and stuff. And then Cassie has a vision of like the Pepsi Cola sign on top of the building falling, and she positions him so that he will get crushed by the S in Pepsi when it falls. And that is how the big bad of this movie is taken down. It's just nonsensical from start to finish, and the editing of this thing, my goodness. It's like I know there was that clip that was released where it's like she's going to like rescue the person in the car, and then like it cuts from her outside the car to her inside the car, and it looks like she's rescuing herself. Like the whole thing is like that. It's like whiplash inducing, like hand cam, like jerky, like just, and the visions themselves are god awful. Man, I will say, here's what the 4% is for, that I gave this, is that they tried their best, as all Spider-Man movies do, to deliver the iconic line, "With great power comes great responsibility." And this is the best they could muster. When you take on the responsibility, great power comes.
Like, I'm sorry, you gave a point for this?
Because
I'm confused.
My point is that in this theater that was relatively full, I cackled when they said that. and then like a couple other people around me laughed because like they probably didn't even like clock this.
Yeah.
That like that was like the line from every Spider-Man movie. And by me cackling, they were like, "Oh wait, that's what it like." Yeah, ha ha ha. So it got a laugh out of me in a bad way, but it was the only emotional reaction I had to this movie. So yes, that's the 4 points.
Okay. Okay.
We solved the mystery there.
Frankly, I don't know if that's worth 4 points, but hey, I understand.
My other favorite line is when because this movie's set in 2003 for whatever reason. And there's like a couple like Toxic by Britney Spears is playing, or like there's a clearly photoshopped billboard for Beyonce's album like on the wall outside her apartment. But Cassie says, it's like after her like near-death experience, she's like, "I gotta get home to watch Idol tonight," like American Idol. And I'm like, this is the most random thing. They're just like, how can we make sure that people know it's the early 2000s? Fuck yeah, American Idol.
Do people call it, or did people call it Idol? I've never heard that.
Yes, I feel like it, I guess so. But also though, like the best thing is that like nothing about like I guess this is just the power of American Idol in the early 2000s because nothing about this character is like I bet Cassie Webb watches American Idol. Like
Right.
she's this
Yeah.
like hardo detached like woman and she has no interest in music or that like TV as a whole, but I guess American Idol just transcends things, man.
Hey, it did have that power. I won't lie to you. I just
Maybe
can't.
she could use her powers to see the future, to see who wins Idol and like maybe like place a bet on it or something. Who knows?
Well, she'd have to place the bet, what, like 30 seconds before
When
the
Ryan
win
Seacrest
happens,
is like, and the winner is.
and the winner is. But yeah. No, American Idol, that was a big thing, but I honestly can't say that I have ever heard someone refer to it as Idol. But Cassie Webb is just that cool. She's trying to make it seem a
She's
little bit more
on a
cool than
last
it
name
is.
basis with Idol.
Yeah. But wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing.
Unless that was set in 2023 and she's talking about The Weeknd and Lily Rose Depp's show, The Idol. Maybe that's
She
maybe
just
she was
dropped
seeing into the
the.
future. Yeah, she
Yeah.
was seeing into the future that far.
Wow. I mean, that would be something. That seems like a one-off, but I don't know if she would use that to check in on the prospects of Sam Levinson's The Idol. But wow. I'm moved. I mean, I'm moved by the power of cinema with how you just described that. So thank you. But
If you need a good
um
laugh, Johnny, just go to Letterbox and like
do I ever.
scroll through some of the reviews here. Let me give a couple. Every line reading feels like it's on a Zoom delay. Um, that's very accurate. I kept expecting Nathan Fielder to pop out and reveal his most elaborate social experiment to date.
That'd be so lit.
There's Oscar bait and then there's Razzie bait. Uh,
Brutal.
man, I think this is like the thing that will heal. You know, nature is healing because we're all coming together.
To
You know, the
dunk on
cast
Madam Web.
included. Dakota Johnson's probably on her burner Letterboxd account dunking on it too. So
Well, I'll say this, and of course I'm not going to be the one to say this because it's me. But it feels like Madam Web is almost like it's the antithesis. It's the like the opposite end of the spectrum from Dune Part 2. It's like you have to experience Madam Web to earn Dune Part 2. Like we have to have the
I'm
cinematic movie going community needs to have this happen so that we can get to the other side, get to the promised
so that
land.
means that you need to go see this so you can earn Dune this week.
I think
You said it yourself.
I know I think I've earned it through other means, so I've paid my dues, but that's my wish. That's my kind of silver lining, maybe. That's my wishful thinking in terms of why this movie had to be made and come out the way it has. But um, you know, hats off, I guess. I don't want to dunk on the dunking has already been done. I think we've seen and heard enough dunking. So I also did see a clip online. It's hard to imagine, like you hear people talking about the movie a certain way. I was actually able to see a couple minutes, like a kind of a compilation of some stuff from the movie. And wow, yeah, it's really not appealing. So I'm glad that I just can't imagine sitting and watching this movie. Like it's harder to like process that. So I guess I just won't. I'll have you lay on your
You're
sword.
not built different like a real sicko, Johnny.
I'm not a sicko on your level, but you fell on your sword for the good of inside the film room, and I think everyone listening, will honor you in that way.
It's not easy being a podcast first, having a podcast first mentality. Someone's gotta do this for the content, Johnny.
Hey, we're not all built that way. I'll tell you that.
Oh, well, that's enough of that. I tried to have this movie leave my brain as quickly as possible. Now that we've recorded, I can officially send this one off into the abyss. But if you tuned in all the way through Madam Web, more power to you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in week in and week out. We really appreciate the support and would not be able to do it without you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for tuning in as always. Really looking forward to obviously now that we've gone through the storm of Madam Web. We have Dune. peeking over the horizon at this point. Really excited for all the chatter that we will be providing with that. So, got that to look forward to hear our thoughts on that and plenty of other stuff as Oscar season's wrapping up and whatnot. Follow us, stay tuned on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube where you can catch all of the episodes. And you can find those pages at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeart, YouTube, anywhere you can find a podcast, we are there. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter, The Rewind, so you can get everything delivered directly to your inbox. And be sure to come back next week. We will be shifting into Dune mode, talking Denis Villeneuve, talking Dune Part 1, getting ready for Dune Part 2. We will see you then.